We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, July 13th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Ki-hoon.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, and also Fabi's with us.
Happy start of the week.
Happy start of the week, and both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're at the start of a brand new work week, and many of us are looking for a fresh start or maybe even a little luck in our personal lives. Today, we're taking a look at a dating trend that's putting a whole new spin on one particular lucky number. So forget about being a perfect 10. According to this trend, being a 7 might actually be quite a flattering compliment. So in Korea, what does it mean if someone is described as a 7 Kim? And how should we react to this?
Oh, it's a difficult question, but I think it could mean you're slightly above the average.
Okay.
Perhaps not Prince Charming, but close to your ideal type. Now, we say 이상형 in Korean, and we actually ask this question quite commonly in the dating scene, like, what is your ideal type? 이상형이 뭐예요? So when we start talking about ideal type, the list can go on and on and on and on. And perhaps just to simplify, we can just give it a score out of 10. But I think, honestly, giving a person a number rating seems a little unrealistic, superficial, and just narrowing like human qualities by not giving enough space and room to actually get to know someone. If you just say, oh, she's a 7, he's an 8, I mean, what is 7? What is 8?
Everyone's standards are different. Everyone's
Exactly.
values are different.
It's subjective. So, but I think this is a very interesting topic because it is kind of trending online as well. So something that we can all relate to.
Right. So what are your thoughts on this, Fabian?
Well, it's interesting. Why 7? I feel like 7 just feels like a very safe number. And it reminds me of those street interviews where they would ask people, how would you rate yourself out of 10? And it was quite funny because a lot of people who were quite confident in their looks but still wanted to play the, let's say, humble card would say 7.
7 is like a safe, like a cop-out.
Exactly,
almost.
because you're not saying that you're close to perfection. And to be honest, perfection is not as relatable, so it's less attractive. So to some extent, I feel like 7 is a little bit hotter than 10
Right, that's a good way to put
in
it.
some situations.
So from today, I'm going to be a 7.
Exactly.
I'm a
So
7.
that's the new goal. So it seems a 7 strikes a balance between confidence and humility, which may explain why the label has resonated with so many people. It's almost as if being perfect has become less appealing than being someone people can actually relate to. So we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. The definition of an ideal man or woman is constantly evolving. The answer has never been fixed. As society evolves, so do our expectations, beauty standards, and even the qualities we value in a relationship. And those standards can look very different depending on the culture. Today on News Generation, we explore what it means to be a perfect 7 in Korea, what it says about the minimum standard people expect from a partner. Just as we saw in a video, the idea of being a 7 isn't really about getting a score. It's about meeting what many people see as the baseline for a good partner. The trend has struck a chord with many young Koreans, especially those who constantly compare themselves to others online. So going back to our discussion in the beginning, what does it actually mean to be a 7 here in Korea these days?
So, before I answer your question, it's worthy to note one rising concept that's gaining a lot of attention among young Koreans like Gen Zs and Millennials. It's the word average and what it means to live an average life. Because so much time, like you said, is spent on social media, we are constantly exposed to other people's lives and inevitably compare their own circumstances with those of others. And what we see as average can be very different. You know, the standards may change due to social media. And this often creates a desire to at least be average or to be somewhere in the middle because much of the content seems beyond reach, too luxurious, something that is far from reality from the consumer's perspective. Now, drawing on this mindset, a YouTuber created charts describing 7 out of 10 10 man and a 7 out of 10 woman. 10 woman.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the term refers to someone who would be rated a 7 out of 10. Now, although 7 is technically above the average score of 5, in the context of dating and marriage, it has come to mean an ordinary person who possesses what are considered the bare minimum acceptable qualities for a potential partner. So if you look at the list, it's a little ridiculous. Because
So that's the bare minimum.
sometimes a bit minimum.
Wow.
And what the
Okay.
YouTuber did was he actually went out into the main street of Myeongdong. He held out the huge chart, as you see on the screen. And he asked people, if you meet all the requirements, I will actually give out free cash. Now, ironically, not a single person actually met those requirements, showing how ridiculous, superficial, unrealistic, even a 7 out of 10 person is considered in today's society.
Like looking at that graph, I feel like a combination of all those qualities. It's crazy to think that should be an average.
That's what I mean.
I feel like I feel like an ideal partner more of it. So of course that raises another question: how realistic really are these expectations? So do you think many people would actually be considered a 7 around you, and would you, I guess, consider yourself a 7?
Well, according to that chart that we just saw, I would not be considered an average man worthy of going on a date or even getting married. So I don't know whether I should be happy or not because I'm not single. So I'm quite happy that I'm not single. But looking at that chart, I don't know whether I should be sad or happy. It's just kind of like, unrealistic. Now, going back to your question, I'm sure there are men and women out there who are actually the 7s. But on the list, there's nothing about personality. Personality
that's a good
traits,
point.
what they
That's a
value
good
the
point.
most, their relationship with their family members, their siblings, and so on. So now, if you're a 7, check all those boxes in that list. I would feel that you would actually want more from the other person because, people can get quite greedy, they can't always be satisfied with what they have and they expect more and more and more. So I do understand where this whole list is stemming from, but the sentiment of actually comparing yourself with others by giving a score seems, again, very superficial,
Right.
unrealistic, and inhumane, to be honest.
It is. And it's like I said before earlier, it's very subjective because like you said, personality, I agree. I think that's quite important and quite non-negotiable, but that's obviously not on the list.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, after seeing some of the requirements, I'm not even sure if I could be a 7 myself. It's much more strict than I expected. But overall, I always consider myself to be around that number. I mean, it's very superficial to put yourself a number, but it's because most of the people around me might also relate to the fact that there is this humane ego, this self-perception and this cognitive bias of like, I always think about myself as a person, my preferences, the things that I want. And so it's very easy to see yourself as a persona that is slightly above average in terms of importance to other people, even if that's not necessarily the reality. But it is that type of ego. However, when you actually put a number to it, I think things start to get a little bit messy. And I'm just curious about which requirements would take you from a 7 to an 8.
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good point as well. Yeah.
More money.
More money, I guess.
Probably. So I think most people probably check a few boxes, but not every single one. And that's what makes this trend so fascinating. It gets everyone comparing themselves. And those comparisons don't actually stop with appearance or personality. So how do people then, I guess, compare? I mean, Kyun just mentioned it, money, like finances, I guess.
Right, so Gen Zs and Millennials are becoming increasingly interested in building wealth, and so they often compare their savings and their assets with other people online. So online, we have finance communities and topics like the average assets of people in their 30s or the minimum amounts of savings that one would need before marrying are becoming more and more common. And I have to admit that even with my friends, that is a very hot topic of conversation. So every year, Korea actually releases statistics on average household assets and income. So the average household assets are about 570 million won, while the average monthly income is around 7.5 million won. So it's easy to see why so many young people are being concerned and anxious about these figures, as they tend to be quite high and a pretty unrealistic standard for young people who are just starting their careers or their own business, and that financial future starts to become a little bit ambiguous.
So it's easy to see how constantly comparing your salary or savings with the average can create unnecessary pressure, especially when social media tends to show only the highlights and the best parts of people's lives. But that raises a bigger question: is the average really even the right standard to measure ourselves against? So we also wanted to hear what our viewers thought about this. So we asked on the i9 News YouTube channel, overall, do you consider yourself average? And here's what they had to say. So more than half of our viewers, 54%, said they consider themselves average overall. Meanwhile, 29% believe they're above average, while 17% feel they're below average. So looking at the results, it is interesting that more than half of our viewers see themselves as average, and perhaps that reflects how many people view themselves not at the top or the bottom, but somewhere in the middle. So is the average that we compare ourselves actually even realistic in the first place, Keenan?
I think it really depends who you target and make the average out of. Like, for example, the average wealth and salary figures can become misleading, just how Fabio just mentioned before, if the small number of high-income individuals are actually accounted for the overall average, which could significantly, raise the overall range. Furthermore, you tend to compare yourself with others more in the online world as you're exposed to, I guess, like I said before, endless, exaggerated, kind of filtered information, again, distorting what is considered the average. Now, according to statistics published by Deloitte last year, 36% of South Korean Gen Z respondents said, and 33% of millennials cited the cost of living as their greatest concern. In addition, 57% of Gen Z respondents said they were barely making ends meet with their current paychecks. So we can say that the glamorous lifestyles portrayed on social media are unlikely to represent the lives of the so-called ordinary average people. But at the same time, because we're so exposed to so much social media and everything that's going around online, these contents, we're kind of brainwashing ourselves and like confusing ourselves to find what is actually average or what's not average, what's above average, what's below average. So people are kind of thinking, why don't I just become the average? But then the standards that we saw today, it's just ridiculously high.
It's
it's extremely high. So people are like in turn becoming, I guess, what's that called? It's relative deprivation. Oh, if this is a standard, if this is what is considered average, I'm not even close to average. And that gives you a sense of discouragement again, in turn. So I don't know if this is a very healthy way of putting things, but I think at the end of the day, it's really up to your mindset. Comparing less. I say do less social media. That's what I try to do. A lot of media detox. It kind of helps to really focus on yourself as well. But we're going to speak to a very good expert soon. So I guess we'll hear more from her.
Right, because when you see a certain type of lifestyle so often on social media, that becomes the average, but it's obviously not. So it seems like the average we see online isn't a necessary reality. It's often a carefully curated version of it. And as more people recognize this disconnect, a different kind of content actually has started resonating with younger audiences. So why is content about, I guess, ordinary, just normal lives become so popular these days, Fabio?
Well, thankfully, we have a positive shift when it comes to social media. So a lot of young creators and just regular people are starting to make content and talking about their own experiences and being very honest and vulnerable, which is a quite big difference from the reality of that distorted average that we are used to seeing with celebrities or high-profile influencers. So that type of toxic comparisons that start with the audience not really feeling connected are starting to become less common, and newer creators who are just being very real about their experiences and the way they see life and the way that they show that most people actually have ordinary lives are starting to get a lot more engagement. And I think that's part of the beauty of social media, the fact that anyone can be part of it. And I have to be honest, I used to watch a lot of celebrities on social media, but nowadays I enjoy rather seeing just normal people doing their crafts or talking about their own concerns.
So to help us better understand why we're so drawn to comparing ourselves with others and more, we're going to talk to a counselor, and that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
To help help us better understand the psychology behind all this, we're now joined by Christy, a counselor at Torch Trinity Counseling Center. So hello, Christy. Thank you so much for connecting with us today. So Christy, why do young people feel pressure to meet certain standards?
Yes, I think there are at least two reasons. First, we have to consider the developmental stage of young people. Because they are still forming their identity, they're naturally more influenced by feedback and messages from the people around them. They're trying to understand who they are and what it means to be successful or accepted. In the absence of a stable internal standard, they often look to others as a reference point. And according to Leon Festinger's social comparison theory, people evaluate themselves by comparing with others, especially when objective standards are unclear. Second, the environment provides very clear standards of what success or attraction should look like. Society, families, schools, and the media constantly communicate what is considered to be average, like mentioned earlier. People nowadays strive for the perfect seven because they want to be accepted by the society and those around them. If they're not able to live up to the expectation, we feel behind, creating a sense of anxiety.
Thank you for that response. Christy, is Korea more comparison driven than other countries? If so, why is that the case?
In South Korea, there are strong social and cultural expectations surrounding academic achievement, prestigious careers, physical appearance, especially, and financial success. These are often viewed as visible markers of attraction, accomplishment, success, making them easy points of comparison. As a result, many young people begin to evaluate their self-worth according to socially defined standards rather than their own intrinsic values. Also, we cannot overlook the influence young Korean people receive at home. Korean parents who have more concern for social reputation and status may give messages that their children should do better than others. And when children grow up hearing these messages, they start to internalize their parents' message, thinking that it's their own. And over time, they may start to believe that their value depends on how well they perform compared to others, and their self-worth becomes increasingly based on external standards.
Well, it's so interesting that comparison becomes a tool for self-assurance, right? It really makes you feel how you should perceive yourself in society. But if we really want to stay confident without constantly comparing ourselves, what can we do?
To stay confident, we need to shift from relying on external validation to developing a stronger sense of internal validation. So, how can we do that? First, reflect on the standards you have to evaluate yourself. Are these standards truly your own, or have they been shaped by society? I resonated with how you guys question, are the standards even right or realistic? These are very good questions. Also, think about the messages you receive from your family, friends, teachers, or other significant people in your life. Did they encourage you to pursue external achievements, or did they help you to value internal qualities, such as having a kind or empathetic personality, or even growing resiliency and inner strength? It's also helpful to reconsider how you define success or being an attractive person. Instead of asking, am I doing better than other people? Ask yourself, am I growing compared to who I was yesterday? When do I genuinely feel good or feel proud of myself? So these questions shift the focus from competing with others to becoming the person you want to be. If we are able to have a stronger inner voice based on internal standards, then we will be less affected by social comparison.
And I guess in order to do that, I guess self-reflection sounds like it'll be really important. And I think this is great advice because I think it's so easy to look for external validation, especially in a society where in an era where we just live on social media. Social media is all around us. There's also, especially I would say Korea is quite a competitive society. So that is really good advice. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on, Christy.
Thank
Thank you very much.
So we just heard from a counselor about why we feel pressure to meet certain standards, why comparison may be especially common in Korea, and how we can build confidence without constantly measuring ourselves against others. Ultimately, though, it all comes down to how we choose to define success and happiness for ourselves, like our Zoom guest, Christy, just told us. So how much should we then care about meeting society's expectations, and what standards do you personally feel are actually worth striving for? Like, what is that internal validation that would be important to you?
I can really resonate with Christy, what she just said, internal validation rather than external validation.
Right.
So instead of like looking outside and comparing yourself with other people and all the standards that other people have set, the society has set, or even your parents. So, I mean, if you have that choice of who you can meet, who you can talk to, who you can spend time with, and if those people make you happy, more valued, I think make that choice right now. If you're surrounded by people who constantly compare you to others, compare themselves with others, and like have unrealistic standards, who keep like looking at all these famous people online and who kind of think, oh, I live a life like them, aspiring to those kind of people, then you can actually choose not to channel your thoughts with them. You can actually change your own environment. What I do personally is I really enjoy going for a run. Now, if you go online, you'll see so many people who are excellent runners who have like all these amazing records. They run like 10 kilometers in like under an hour, all these like fast pace, they have their own standards of what's considered a good runner. I don't look at those things. I did for a bit, and then I started running. I'm like, I cannot keep up with these guys.
Right.
So what I did was I just compete against myself. So what I recorded the day before, I would try to beat that today and set a new personal record. And the next day, I would try to beat my record that I set today. So I'm just kind of like constantly, competing against myself, and that just really gives me a high level of self-esteem as well, and it really raises my confidence instead of like comparing my record, my numbers, my time with other people who are, excellent runners. So I think that is one way to really keep yourself kind of happy. Listen to your inner voice, know what makes you happy, what makes you feel good. For me, it's like just compare myself to myself, not others.
I think that's a great tip. I think that's also, it would work in just life, not just
general,
for running, but also life itself. So what are your thoughts on this?
I think we have concepts like healthy competitions, and also the fact that sometimes it can be a motivational aspect to have a standard, a societal standard. But it's also true that it is a very backed situation, because at the same time, it only seeks for external validation, and that self-assurance also comes with the cost of depending your self-worth on someone else's work or someone else's situation. And I think that can be a little bit complicated. Of course, we cannot avoid comparisons or societal standards. We need to make the most out of those, but we also have to minimize the risks by being a little bit more self-aware about who we really are and what we really want.
Right, but I think for me sometimes it's like hard not to do that. For me at least, it's because sometimes I don't know what standards to set or what standards to look towards. So what do you do usually?
So I feel like things that are already set, the things that we see on social media, they can become a guide in some way of like, okay, this is the type of person that I want to be. It can become something motivational. But at the same time, when you have to like reach from within, I know that it's a pretty big problem of like figuring out what you really want to do and who you really want to become. But I feel like that whole journey is also interesting to explore for yourself. Either way, I just think that you have to avoid the negative risks. So whatever it is,
focus on the positive aspects.
Focus on the positive
aspects.
aspects.
That's a good tip.
So even when we're talking about whether you want to be a 7 or a 10 or a 5, you just need to see what those societal requirements are. And when you look at the list, if you feel like that is just stupid, maybe that is not
it's
the
not really
way.
important to you.
Exactly. Maybe that importance is just not part of your life.
That's a good tip. So perhaps the healthiest goal isn't to live up to someone else's standards, but to define success on our own terms. After all, everyone's strengths, values, and journey are different. And maybe that's a much better measure than any number could ever be. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. And News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Ki-hoon.
Thanks for having me.
And also Fabio.
I'll give this episode a 7.
Great. And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully your week is a perfect 10, even if you're a 7. We are
News Generation.